Welcome to Within Our Reach. This is our first episode. I'm your host, Garnell. And we have a special guest today, Mr. Emanuel Parilla, or Parilla, however you say it. So real quick, guys, Within Our Reach is essentially, it's going to be a short series of videos where I'm essentially interviewing people that give us inspiration, right? I think oftentimes for our community and for everybody, it's so difficult for us to see ourselves achieving certain things when those roles, we don't typically see people that may look like us, or we don't know, maybe a doctor or a lawyer or a plumber or a business owner, whatever it is you may have it. So essentially I'm shooting this series so that we can hear these stories and not only be inspired, but gain something out of it, something for everybody. So without further ado, this is Manny, my boy Manny.
Yes, sir.
So first off, thank you for coming. Appreciate having you. Just tell people who you are. So what's your name? What do you do? Who are you?
So my name is Emanuel, Parilla, also Manny. I'm a physician assistant at Bay State High Street, and born and raised in Springfield. And so yeah, I'm just a little town kid that came from Springfield and kind of chased my dream.
Now, how long have you been a physician assistant?
So I graduated in June of 2020, right in the middle of kind of like the pandemic, and I started working in September. So I've been certified since about June, but I haven't been working. I started working in September, I said maybe five months.
Okay, perfect. So let's take it back a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about Manny. Tell me about young Manny. How was life for you growing up? How was, let's talk. Yeah. Tell me your earlier years. How did you grow up?
So I grew up on the same house for I want to say maybe like the past 25 years. I'm 26 years old, so I pretty much kind of got here, and for a few months we were somewhere else, but for the most part we was at the same house. I grew up with my mother and my father. I did have that luxury. That's one thing I do have to say. I grew up with mom and dad. I did have a brother. I do have a brother. So for the most part, I always went to public schools in Springfield. Went to Brightwood for my elementary. For middle school, I went to Chestnut, and then for high school, I went to Central High School.
For real quick, for you guys that don't know, me and Manny actually went to the same high school.
Yes.
That's actually how I met Manny.
Yes. Yeah. So class of 2013 for high school, and then for undergrad, I ended up going to UMass Amherst. So yeah, for the most part, I kind of always stayed in the area, no matter how far I went. Mom and dad being here, and in my junior year of undergrad, I had a daughter. So I ended up even being.
Oh wait, actually, before we get to that, he's getting ahead of us.
Okay.
But tell me more so, how was life for you growing up? How did it feel? What was that like? You had two parents in a household. What was what mom, what pops do?
Right.
And
no, so my mother, she had an associate's when she was in Puerto Rico, because my mom and my dad they were both born and raised in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So she has an associate's in business management and things like that.
Yeah.
My father, he did not really pursue school that much. It was a different time, so it was more of he had to provide for his family by working. Okay. So I think he made it to the ninth grade, and then after that he was forced to drop out. So for the most part, I do identify that as a luxury, kind of, because I know, and I didn't know that was a luxury until later on in my life. Until a lot of my friends, it was either with only mom at home or only dad at home.
Yeah.
So I was lucky to have that stability at home. So I mean, for the most part, growing up as a child, my mother would tell you I was difficult. I was difficult in the terms of my attitude.
Yeah.
School, I always had good grades.
Right.
But my attitude, when you look at the report cards, you look at the bottom where it tells you the behavior.
They always had something for you.
Always had something, but it was A's.
Yeah.
It was okay, this guy got good grades, but he has a problem. Chatty, and just always didn't know how to sit still.
Okay. So how do you feel your earlier years, maybe up to 16, 17, 18,
right.
How do you feel that has shaped you? How does that make you the man that you are today?
I've always been the one that I didn't really have to. I didn't have to go through something to understand the lesson from it. when I know it's a little different.
Yeah.
But just hearing my father, I think at an early age, tell me like, listen, you know, I know it's tempting to want to, you know, go into the streets or do X or Y, Z.
Yeah.
You know, it's tempting to do that, but I can tell you from a first person, you know, point of view, it's not. You either got one or two choices. You know, you either end up in a coffin or you end up behind bars. So I think that just hearing it from him, I didn't have to go through that to kind of understand, like, okay, this is a common theme that I'm noticing upon, like, with everybody. So I'm not gonna go down that route. And of course, it was tempting. I mean, it was tempting, of course, like that. But I always stood above it. And I think that growing up, having that like figure at home kind of always in my ear, like telling me like, listen, I see you slipping, like you know, what are you doing? I think having that at home was big in my upbringing. And then in high school, it was a big transition, because at that point it's like you're trying to really figure it. Like in elementary, it's like, okay, middle school you might go through a little transition or whatever, but in high school that's really where you hit that okay, who am I? Good. And I think that you know, with the group of friends that I ended up kind of with, and that I surrounded myself with, even though a lot of them, like they weren't really, school wasn't really, I noticed at a young age that it wasn't really a priority for them. Yeah. It was more of like just wanting to like look cool or whatever the case is. And even though I always did kind of have that friendship, I made sure, and I knew that, and I don't know why or how, but I just knew that school was always going to have to be like number one in my life. So
now when we talk about school, you actually knew what you wanted to do, or basically, well, you knew that you wanted to get into the medical realm from a young age.
From a young age, yeah.
How early was that?
I mean, when you look back at it, I think of, I think in elementary, I noticed that like science and math were like my favorite studies. I noticed that I was like, oh, I'm good at it and I enjoy it. But I didn't know that the medical field was where I wanted to be until like, I want to say maybe middle school. I want to say like maybe 6th grade. I knew, because I remember I was speaking to an EMT at that time, and they kind of taught me a little bit about like what they did. And as I kept like diving in, I noticed that, and I noticed that I would fake like being sick to be at a doctor's office.
Oh, really?
And looking back now, it's like, nah, it's because I wanted to see that doctor in that white coat, and I always had questions for them, like, so how many years did you do, or like what do you do as a doctor? And looking back now, it's like I've always been drawn to the field.
Why is that? What about being a doctor? What made it so cool? I mean,
and so so it starts back to when before I was born. My mother, when she was pregnant with me, she was told by physicians and the medical field that I was going to come out with, you know, mental retardation, that I was going to come out with a lot of complications. And their advice to her was to have an abortion. And she's a God-fearing woman, and she goes to church and everything like that. So they told her, they said, you know, well, like, why are you keeping this, knowing like what we told you with medicine? And so she was going to a church, and somebody at the church kind of laid hands on her and told her, like, do not abort the child. Like, we have plans for him. Really? Yeah. And it was at that moment that she was like, all right, we made the decision. I'm going to keep the child. Yeah. When I was born, the doctors were in awe. They didn't understand that everything from ultrasounds to blood tests and everything like that, it didn't make any sense, because I was completely fine. And they told her, they were like, well, how is like,
but you shouldn't have been.
No, we shouldn't have been. Yeah. And my mother was just like, then that's where my name comes from, Emanuel, because in the Bible it means God is with you. Wow. So that's why she named me, and she was like, you know, it's a miracle. Obviously, medicine doesn't really, you can't back that up. There's no data, there's no facts to kind of back that up. Yeah. So I think that growing up, that my mother telling me that story, and me thinking of, okay, well, the medical field deemed me as a loss. And I don't know why I've always been drawn to the field. It was more of like I'm living proof that yes, like the medical field is what it is. Yeah. There's miracles that exist, and I don't know why, but like I'm drawn to that field. And I think it goes as far back as that, is the fact that I feel like as I'm proving it wrong as a living sample, but also every day, every day. But practicing the same practice that told my mother like that I wasn't gonna be. So I think that's and it's not something I can really like kind of put my hand on it, but I think it definitely draws and it ties into it tremendously.
That's tough. I didn't even know all of that stuff.
No, yeah, I know.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's fast forward a little bit. Now, you get to high school. I mean, you know you want to be a medical student. Like, if I remember correctly, y'all. And Manny was on it in high school, man. I tell you one thing. You know, a lot of us at high school at the time were figuring out a lot, and he still was figuring out himself. But there was a lot of things a lot of us don't really know what career path we necessarily want to do. But you had a mission, right? Yeah. Because if I'm correct, you graduated. Where'd you graduate? Ranked in our class?
I think it was either 6th or 7th around there.
In our entire, mind you, y'all, we had a big class. I think, what did we graduate? 800? Well, no, we started 800 at freshman year. I think we graduated like 3. It was a large class. I think it was one of the largest classes that we've had to date at that point. And this gentleman graduated 6, 7, 8. Man, that's phenomenal. Yeah. So what did that? Because high school is a time where you got gang violence, you got sports, you got this, you got everybody. How were you able to keep your head on and stay focused despite? Because you're not and there's nothing wrong with being a nerd, but you're not this person who just hits the books and playing.
I had a social life.
Yeah,
I had a social life outside of knowing, my counterparts and everything. But I think what the biggest thing with me in high school is I learned time management. And I think that knowing okay, you have this on this week, you can have your fun and whatever thing, but 2 days before or a day before, you really got to buckle down and do this because you have that exam where you got to make sure you got, this quiz coming up and everything like that. So I think once I found out my rhythm in school, I was able to kind of do both. Like it wasn't like an all or nothing where I had to only do, hit the books and not be able to have much of a social life. Like I had my friends. I had a balance. I was in high school and I was still going out to the house parties and everything like that. And I had my relationships and everything like that. Like I wasn't just books. It was like I did sports and everything, but it was that fine balance between the two. And I just knew I think it was a message in the back of my head that because we're taught if you want to be successful, you got to go to school. You have to kind of school has to be a priority. Yeah. So I made sure that school was the number one priority, and everything else that I did was in the back burner. Everything else was kind of okay, if I got time to do it, I can do it. But school needs to be my number one.
And you never slipped up to a degree. Like you never, you knew where you wanted to go, and it seems like you almost worked backwards. You know what I mean? Like I know I got to get good grades because I know if getting to medical school or getting approved for college is, you know what I mean, for what I'm trying to do, it's competitive. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And that's what that draws kind of into that. It's I knew what I wanted and I put that goal and I made sure I built my life around it, whether it was from the jobs that I was working, from everything. I just made sure that whatever I did kind of made my application for med school because I think that knowledge of knowing what I wanted to do kind of geared everything else that I did in my life. It was okay, I could work at Mass Mutual, for example, as an insurance agent, but how is that going to make me look better?
How's that going to
when I apply to school? So it was kind of like playing chess. You know what I mean? I'm making sure that everything that I did made me look as an overall better applicant for when I go to med school or PA school, which is what I ended up kind of doing.
Yeah. So talk more about that. So originally you didn't want to necessarily be a PA, right? What did you want to do, and how did you end up becoming a PA?
So I've, because, all right, so you got to remember, the PA profession started in 1960 something around there. Yeah. So it's a fairly new career. And when I was going to school, in high school, you didn't really know what a PA was because the career was just blossoming. It's still, people didn't really know what, and there is to this day, people don't really understand the role of a PA. Okay. And so at that time, all you know is med school. So you are all right, I want to go to med school, I want to be a doctor, So I kind of made my application look as best as I can for being to go to med school. Yeah. It wasn't until I think it was my junior year in college that I saw one of my colleagues that she ended up getting into PA school. And so I thought about it because around that time was when my daughter was born, and I know that the commitment to med school is at least 4 years of schooling and 4 years of residency. That's 8 years. And I'm am I going to really miss the first 8 years of my daughter's life? So I had to kind of refocus, okay, why do I want to be a doctor? And I knew that I wanted to, through the medical field, kind of help out my community.
Yeah.
So I thought about, okay, so can I do that as a PA, which is 2 years of post-grad, school.
Yeah.
And I can cut that time in like almost half. Right. So, and residency is not kind of required. So when I looked at the whole picture, I said, okay, I can still serve my community with the way I want to, and go to by becoming a PA. So I think I made the decision fairly quick. Yeah. That I was gonna do it, and I just put the application in, and that was it. It was I'll never forget. It was on an overnight while I was working at BHN. Yeah. That I made the decision. Absolutely.
And how was that though? Because you devoted literally most of your probably conscious life to pursuing to be a doctor. I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna be a doctor no matter what. Yeah. No matter what. You found out what basically first off, what made you make that pivot into becoming a PA? What happened that you were like, that's what I'm gonna do?
I think education. I read into what a PA does, what they can do, and I saw that ideally there was no difference in the way they treat patients from being a doctor to being a PA. The only difference was that in the future, because at the end goal is to open up a clinic in Springfield, like 10 years down the line and everything like that. I can do that still as a PA, and I think it's just because I didn't know that the career of being a PA existed. Correct. That that's why I didn't. Had I known that being a PA was a thing, I would have geared my life towards that. And there's no difference. The application to go to med school and PA school is not. No, honestly, I think the only thing that's any different is research. Is that a lot of med schools, they like to have research or see that you want to kind of do that. PA school, you don't need that in order to get in, because it's more of like the patient care that you're
Okay. Let's take it back a little bit further. So you know, high school's coming up, you're graduating, going into your freshman year, or in your freshman year, I believe. What happens, right? Because it wasn't all glitz and glam. I mean, granted, you grew up, you had two parents in your household, which doesn't necessarily mean life was a cakewalk for you either, right? But what ends up happening as you're trying to pursue your college degree or going to pursue your college degree? You get a nice gift, right? That changes your life forever, right?
Yeah. So my daughter, it was sophomore into junior year. It was around that time.
Oh, sophomore and junior year, college.
Yeah, college.
Gotcha.
That's when I found out that I was gonna be a father. And like my freshman year, even though I was at UMass, I was still at home. If you ask any of my friends, they'll tell you he was still coming.
He was there,
home.
But he wasn't.
He was still coming home on the weekends. Yeah. He wasn't really kind of letting. I always made sure. So I knew I'm paying for college now, right? This is coming either out of my pocket or my parents' pocket. It's not like high school where you're going and it's a free thing. You're going and it's like an investment. I can go and kind of waste that investment by letting the party life and everything that comes with being a college student kind of take me in and take me off of the goal, or you can get in and get out.
Because you at UMass Amherst, right? This is party school. They parties all the time.
Even where I lived in Southwest, like everyone knows, the Southwest is where they call it the jungle. Like it was like that. And people who went up there to visit me and everything on the weekends, they saw it. And I made sure that I stayed. So I had a goal, and I made sure that whatever I did, if it did not edify or kind of build towards that, I had no interest in it. And of course, don't get me wrong, I had my fair share. I did my thing, but it wasn't. I made sure it didn't kind of consume me.
Yeah, it didn't interfere with what you're trying to do.
No, and yeah.
So you find out you're gonna be a father.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? What is going on? I mean, you're trying to go to med school. You're already trying to do something that is not necessarily just a path right now for you. It's not a cakewalk. Now you're about to have a daughter. How do you feel? What's happening?
I was scared.
Yeah.
I was scared because, think about it, I was 19, I was 20 when she was born. So at 20 years old, you still don't really know who you are.
Yeah.
So it's like I have to now figure myself out, but also help this child and be the best that I can. So, and I'll never forget one of the first things when my mother found out that I was going to be a father, first thing she said was, "This wasn't in the plans." And then the next words out of her mouth was, "You're not leaving school." I will not even, no question. It was like, "You're not leaving school." Regardless. I'm like, okay, well that was like a relief to me, because I was worried about it. I was like, you hear the stories of people when they get kids and their dreams, they kind of like, they disappear, or they end up having to, now they have to work to be able to maintain this child. Yeah. And that's why I give the utmost like respect, the honor to my parents, because they stepped up during those days that I was at UMass Amherst studying to make sure I get that, the finals, when finals came around, that I was like, I have to, they stepped up and they helped me. That's why that support system is something that I know a lot of people don't have. So it's like, if it wasn't for them to be able, I honestly, I don't think I'd be here. I wouldn't be a PA right now, because they helped me out tremendously, and the mother of my child was understanding. Yeah. And so it was just
good team. Man.
Yeah, it was a good team, a good support system. Yeah. And I think that even focused me even more, because my grades actually, believe it or not, they got even better after my daughter was here.
Really?
Yeah, because I now had a purpose.
Yeah.
I had a purpose, because I knew, I was like, now I have to get that goal. And like, you had the goal, Manny, and it was like, okay, it is what it is. But now it's like, I have to achieve this to make sure that she has a future, so that I can give her, everything that she wants.
The drive is completely different when you gotta do it for somebody else too, man.
Yeah, because you now you're worried about, like, I could fail.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, man, you failed. It is what it is. Yeah. But when you have a child, it's like, dang, it's not just you that you're letting down. You almost feel like, as a parent, that you're letting them down. Yeah. So it refocused me. And yeah, that was about sophomore into junior year, and then I graduated. And yeah. And then after, I took a year off after I graduated undergrad. Yeah. In that year, I worked as an EMT in Springfield, and that really shaped, and I was also during my undergrad at UMass, it really shaped and kind of solidified that I wanted to work as a PA, and it just solidified where I wanted to be a PA.
So let's get into that a little bit. Yeah. Because now I'm thinking back, even into high school, even back in high school, you didn't just say you wanted to, go into the medical field and just go to school and just hope the best happened, right? You did different things that positioned you to be where you're at right now. Like, for example, there was a program that was offered, right? Even back in high school,
the BSEP program.
How was that? Like, what was the value in that for you?
Oh man, so at that time, the BSEP program, which stands for Bay State Springfield Educational Partnership Program, they weren't offered to freshmen in high school. It was only to sophomore and sophomore, junior, senior. And I think that in that sophomore year, and at that time we only met once a week in one of the science classes, and we always had different people from the medical field come in. So like, we had a paramedic come in once, a nurse, a doctor. Once again, never PA, never NP. We didn't know. So they always came in and they were just teaching us different things. Like, one of the times they were teaching us like how the defibrillator on an AED works. Okay. How an EKG machine kind of works. Obviously, they can't go into like how to read them, because that takes a lot more like teaching and yeah. But they just, and I noticed that like I was so intrigued by it, and it was just once a week, and I couldn't wait until like, next week, what's the next, what's on the schedule. Yeah. And I made sure I went to that, and it was my junior year to senior year in high school that I had the chance to go to Tufts Medical School in Boston, and it was 5 days a week, and it was through the BSEP program, and we went to the medical school and we learned like anatomy and physiology, but obviously at like the level of a medical student, so that was an insane amount of depth. Insane amount of like depth. Yeah, it was crazy. And on those weeks, because it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I had the ability to shadow a doctor at the main hospital who was a third-year resident. And his name was Dr. Hernandez. Francisco.
He was Hispanic?
Yeah. His name was Paco. They called him Paco.
It sounds like a Spanish name. Yeah. So, okay.
And it was then that by seeing him, that's a big moment. By seeing him, he was a Hispanic who is in the role of like what I wanted to be at. It kind of like solidified, like, I can do this. Because of course, when you're on the road to becoming what you want to be, like there's times where you're like, are you sure this is what I want to do? Like, you have those doubts where you're like, I don't know, man, like I don't really see too many Hispanics doing this. Yeah. So by me seeing him, I was like, I can do this. Yeah. It's attainable. I can do this. So, and that was just kind of like, it solidified and we still stay in contact to this day.
And that is actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Like, how important was it for you to see people that look like you or people that come from your similar backgrounds, doing the things that you want to do, how was that able to propel you or stuff like that? Because that's what the whole show is about. You know what I mean? I want people to be able to hear your story and be like, that could be me. You know what I mean? I might not have everything the same exact way, but it wasn't just it wasn't a cakewalk, right? No. Your parents didn't just cut a check for school and life was good. You just had to show up.
No, when I grew up, and that's just to kind of touch on that. Yeah. When I grew up and I found out that my parents for Christmas to give me gifts would just not pay the light bill for that month, or like skip out on a payment on a mortgage, that fueled me even more. That when I got to where I'm at, I have to they did that for me. Like they sacrificed so much so that I can get there. Yeah. And like that, knowing as an adult, that's huge. That's huge. So like I'll always give them the honor, like I said before. And it wasn't a cakewalk. There was moments where it was hard. It was very hard. And I think seeing Paco there, it kind of solidified like I can do it. Because once again, I didn't have any role model that I was like, oh, he's a doctor. I can do that. Before I met him on my junior year of high school, it was just me that was like, okay, I know that like less than 1% of people who graduate are Hispanic, so I'm gonna be part of that 1%. Like I had that drive to want to be different. I always wanted to be different.
Be a part of that 1%.
Yeah, you know I wanted to always go against the statistic, because let's look back at what they already talking about us, people of color. We're statistics. Statistically, I was supposed to end up in jail or end up doing something that was not where I was at. So I was like, okay, I already beat those odds. This is just another obstacle that I'm gonna take. You know, so that was my drive. I always wanted to kind of like prove it. And even in high school, if we were gonna go back, I'll never forget, there was this one teacher who told me, she was like you're a class clown. Like I don't see you, like you're probably gonna end up getting, in about a couple months, you're gonna end up getting booted out of this class. I can see it already. I've dealt with your kind before.
Really?
And I think hearing those words, I was like, okay, I am a class clown. Yeah. But now I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I think it was after like the second exam where she saw like I was getting like high grades, like a 90, 100. She was like, okay, I misread you. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, it's okay. I've dealt with it my whole life. Yeah. And like looking back at it now, I was like, dang, if I was someone else and a teacher would have told me that, how do you think that? Yeah, it would have broke my spirit. It would have been like, I'm just gonna go, like everyone already is thinking the worst of me. So it's like, it's those pivotal moments that you can either let it debilitate you or fuel you to move forward. That's true. And that's what I did. That's what I did. And to kind of go back to your point, there was no, aside from Paco at that time, and my father, because obviously my father's like is a role model to me no matter what. Even if it wasn't the medical field, he's a superhero to me. Yeah. Like he did it. Like, you know what I mean? Like he didn't even go to school and he's here. Like he did it. Yeah, he provided. Yeah. So to me, it was like that hunger, that drive. I knew I got it from him. So yeah. So when that teacher when she told me that, it was like I said, it could have broke me down. Yeah. It kind of made me think like, okay, like this is what everyone's already thinking of me. Let me just go with the flow. It's easier to go with the current than to go against it. So you know what? All right, that's what people are thinking. Yeah. But I didn't. I knew that it was either like, I just knew that that's not the way it was gonna be. And even since elementary, I'll never forget, in elementary there was teachers all over the place that were always saying the same thing. Like this kid, because remember, I always had the smarts, but my attitude and my not having handle on my emotions got me in trouble. So I was always the one that was either.
What do you mean by that? Were you was argumentative? Was you too chatty? Was you rude? Or
how? All three of those. Yeah? All three. I did whatever I wanted. Okay. And it was like, I'm going to do whatever I want, but I'm going to make sure I got the straight A. And it's like, you know, and a lot of people, and we see that, and we know people that we graduated with that are very intelligent, but they just, they don't think that school is for them, or they got stuff going on at home that impedes them from doing their best in school. And it's tough, but I just get so deep into it. I just feel like when people when they say like, all right, school is not for me, usually it's because they have other things that at home they're dealing with, that it's not like I can give 100% to school. Like, okay, I wish that I didn't have to worry about how I'm gonna pay, how my light's gonna stay on at home, or how I'm gonna eat food for the next week, so that I can dedicate and devote all my attention into school. Some of them don't have, they have to really worry about like stuff at home, and that takes precedence over, okay, doing this math problem and this homework that I got to get done by Friday. And I feel like they're misinterpreted as, okay, you're not applying yourself, or you just don't care about school or whatever. It's, they have, and I wish that more people kind of understood that it's that they're worried about other things at home, like survival. They're in survival mode, as opposed to like, okay, thriving. There's a difference between surviving and thriving. And I feel like a lot of times in like the school, like where we were raised up in Springfield, where a lot of times we're surviving. We're just trying to get by.
And bro, and I think you hit it on the head, man. Like, our best friend is off camera, right? But we was having a conversation not too long ago about this stuff like that. It's like, I heard that there was a saying. It was like, there's, what's the saying? It goes, give a man a fish, like he'll eat for today or something like that. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. It's a lot easier. All that stuff is nice. But how about you? It's a lot easier for him to learn that stuff when he's fed, right? Exactly. When he don't even have food, I don't even care about learning how to fish. I need to figure out how I'm gonna survive right now.
Yes.
And that's so true for a lot of kids, especially in our community. It's just like, these are some kids that potentially could have a phenomenal future, right? But it's just like when your mom is working all the time and you ain't got no father around, right? Or things are just rough at home for whatever the reason may be, right? And you're telling me, you're showing me that I gotta go to school, which is gonna take a couple years, but we don't got no light at home, right? We barely ate this month, right? This school lunch is the only thing I'm gonna eat today.
Yes.
You have, the schools are the last thing on your mind. Getting good grades is the last thing on your mind. And for a lot of people, it seems like, well, that's the easy way, that's the answer, But it's just like, yo, you know what I mean? You're telling me to think good thoughts, but I'm running off of a cliff a second, right? Yes. The road is ending over there. And that's how it feels for a lot of people. So I think what you're saying is
no, right and it's true. And I feel like it all draws back to the system. Yeah. And I know it sounds whatever, but it's not really set up in a form to. I'll never forget this. It's a picture or a meme that was made. It was like where there's a tree, right? And you got a tiger, you got a fish, you got all types of different animals, a monkey and everything like that. Yeah. And they're saying, this is how the school system is. I'm going to grade you on how fast you can climb that tree. Think about it. Yeah. Of course the monkey's going to do better. Of course, but the fish, it doesn't mean that he's not smart or whatever. It's that that's not his way. Yeah. That's not his form. And the problem is that that's how the school system is. Like we were talking not the other days. Yeah. How do we not know how to do taxes or how to budget? Like it's not set up to a form that kind of help us thrive after when we're an adult. Yeah. One of the biggest transitions and problems that I had when I became an adult was I didn't know how to deal, like, what is this? What taxes? Yeah. What is this? Or I gotta do what? I gotta do.
But we all need it though. Like every year, we all gotta do it. You know what I mean?
Always.
But nobody knows that. We weren't taught that at least.
No. Or a resume. Do you know how many people? Because once again, I'm always gonna help. If you were trying to get to your dream and attain your goal, I'm gonna help out in whatever way that I can do. You know how many people's resumes that I'm like doing for them because they've never done one in their life?
That's crazy.
Because they just don't know how to, or they don't know what the purpose of it is. And it's like, I think I took one class where I did one resume in high school, and it was just like, you can copy it off of Google. It was like, it wasn't like something that was very, like, I just feel like it's going against, like, the truth of the matter. Like, when you become an adult, you're supposed to know how to do all these things. Yeah. But who's teaching us? Especially in households where it's a single parent, and she's working 80 hours a week to keep, a roof over your head. Come on. Like real talk, like
it's tough, man.
It's tough.
A lot of things sound good, you know what I mean? And people argue that, people have other options, just like that. It's just like sometimes the option don't feel like an option, right?
Yeah.
You don't really know what to believe in because ain't nobody believed in you. You know what I mean?
Precisely.
So it's just like, when you're in a corner and everybody got you and put you in a corner, you only have a couple options, man. You can't run no more. It's to start swinging. It's to cower down and get in the fetal position, right? But you only have but so many options. For a lot of people, they feel like they're in that corner in life, and it's time for them to swing back. And unfortunately, sometimes it's in ways that you know, it's not productive and it's detrimental to them. But I mean, I'm hoping things like this and, you know, things can come in place. And I know there's a lot of other people out there trying to push some good initiatives so that this isn't the story for a lot of people. But it is tough. You know what I mean?
Is. And this is just kind of like fast forward into like now as being a provider.
Yeah.
In Springfield, because I got offers to like be a provider in like other cities.
Yeah.
I chose to stay in Springfield.
Why?
Because it's like Springfield made me. Like Springfield made me who I went to Springfield public schools. It wasn't like I went to a private school. No, I went to Springfield public schools, and you know, you can either let that not like I've been saying, not let you get to your goal, or you can kind of stay above it and be like, you know what, I know that this is the goal, and I'm gonna get there. Yeah. So I chose to stay in Springfield because, to me, it's like they already have role models. They already have, you know, their assistants. If you look at the way the medicine is, it's really meant to benefit, and we all hear about it. If you have money, you know, you have all types of cures. You have all types of things, and if you don't, then it's kind of like, sorry. Right. So by being even in the way that I practice as being a PA in the primary care, is I'm realistic with the situation. Like I had, for example, I have a couple patients that, you know, they tell me, doc, like that's not feasible for me. You want me to eat organic, you want me to eat healthy, you want me to, but I'm living off of food stamps and I only have X amount of money, and the only thing that it really covers is the ramen noodles, the canned foods, and all those things that you're telling me to stay away from. Sheesh. So it's like you have to keep that in mind, because remember, I was around that growing up, so I understand. Yeah, the last thing on his mind is making sure that his blood pressure is controlled by eating leafy greens and stuff like that. Yeah. So you bargain with him, you compromise with him. You tell him, okay, well, if you at least give me at least 30 minutes a day where you walking around your neighborhood, or going up and down stairs, or standing in front of a TV, doing push-ups, whatever it is that gets your blood pumping, I'm okay with that. Anything you can give me, because at the end of the day, health is wealth. And it's, as cheesy as it might sound to some people, you notice that as you get older, you're like, wait a minute. Those complications, you see them when you're like in your 50s or 60s. You don't really see them when you're like 18, 19, 20. You don't. But if you are mindful of it now and you make just subtle changes, it turns into habits, a lifestyle. Trajectory, yeah. So that's kind of like how I practice. It's not. Yeah. I'm not very formulaic when you're talking to patients, especially, you know, we of the same skin tone. I understand. So like to me, I got to be mindful of it, because I remember when I was there and it was like, yeah, we eating, you know, sopalito, like stuff like that. Like we eating soup today, and realistically, like we have to be real. You can't be very like formulaic and following like the way like recommendations from the CDC and stuff like that, because they're not really helping.
In theory, they sound great.
Yeah, but hypothetically.
In reality, it doesn't always work out that way.
And you have to know that, and I think that's why, like the patients are always very like, you know, like, oh man, I like you. Like, why are you different? How are you so different? I'm just like, because I understand where you're coming from. Like, of course. Yeah. And that's why. And at the end of the day, that's when I was in high school. That's what I was envisioning when I'm in this position, giving back and being able to like, okay, this kid's like what, 26, and he's telling me, but it's like he knows what he's talking about. Because when I was in high school, I made sure I paid attention, that I did this, that I stayed above everything. You know, and I'll never forget when I was on my rotation at pediatrics, I had a father who brought his kid. He was like 17 years old, and I guess he was having like troubles in school. And one of the first things he told him was like, you see, if you straighten your stuff out, you could be like him. You could be like him. And I think that in my head, I was like, I see the message, but no. Like I told him, I was like, listen, it's okay. Like I know what your father, like his intent was to kind of like, you know, to guide you, but you be you. At the end of the day, like if school, just because school is not for you, or you feel like it's not, that just means you haven't found out like your niche and stuff like that. And I think that really opened. He's like, yeah, like you're right. And I was like, you know, what's your hobby? Like, what do you like doing? Do you like this? Yeah. You know, there's different ways to do it than to just go to school. And I think that's the biggest. For sure. That's the biggest kind of thing.
Even for me, bro. Like I remember high school. Like it was rough for me. Like I actually hated high school. To be honest with you, a lot of people don't know that, but like I did not enjoy high school. I mean, you know, athletically, I played football and things didn't necessarily go my way, especially after the freshman year. You know, I had a breakup freshman year that hurt me, and then school was just on the back burner for me. It just wasn't that important for me, and my grades lacked for it, and that ended up affecting me in college, where I could go to college, and then I couldn't play football even though I loved it beyond that, and then I had to go to this school, but then that didn't work out. Then I went to this other school, and then it was just so many things that happened, and for the longest time I just didn't I was like, at school, I'm not doing this school thing. I'm getting bad grades. I think I graduated with a. I don't even know. To be honest with you guys, I didn't even graduate when everybody else graduated. I graduated within the same year, but I actually graduated in the summer. Right. Because school wasn't, and I was smart. I could do it. It wasn't like it wasn't rocket science to me. It just didn't have a care for it. There was nothing that was propelling me. And I was just, you know what I mean? But it was something that in college that hit me after, and even in college, like I still was a knucklehead for a while, and I was still, withdrawing from that class and failing that one and getting good grade in that one. But then it was just up and down with me. And at some point I had to look at myself as a man and just say, like, listen, here's where we're trying to go, right? Then I figured the business what I wanted to do, right? Here's where we're trying to go. And I'm here, right? I'm still coming here every semester. I'm already going to be here. I might as well apply myself. I might as well give myself the best chance to succeed. Look what not having the right grades has done for me already. Right. So I'm here to tell you guys that it's not the end of the world if you might not have the most phenomenal grades, especially for you kids out there. But it is important that you do start trying to turn things around. And you got resources and people out there that want to help you. I promise you, you really do. It took me a while, you know what I mean? Ultimately, it did affect me to this day. However, there's ways around it, right? It's not a brick wall. It's not something that you can't overcome. And in closing, so like, tell me, if you can go back, like they always say, better yet, we're not even gonna go there. We're gonna do something a little differently. Right. What would you tell somebody who has bigger dreams or wants better for themselves, but feel like they have nowhere to go, or what would your advice be to that person?
As cliche as it sounds, don't give up. Don't give up. And if there's not a path, to where you want to do, then create it. At the end of the day, create the way to whatever you want to be. If with enough will, with enough time, with enough drive and hard work and diligence, you can do whatever you want. Yeah. There's nobody that can stop you. If you put your mind to something, you can do it. It's just you need to find what it is that you enjoy, and then just go all in. If you do half and half, you're gonna get half and half results. Yeah. If you give 100, you're gonna get 100 back, and that's it. That's just the way
And I'll add to that too. Like, don't be too prideful. No. Have too much of an ego to take help, right? To ask for help. You know what I mean? To get mentors, because mentors and people that have blazed the trail for what you're trying to do. Right. It's 10x's whatever it helps you out so much and so much faster. You go further and faster with help. I know a lot of people love the whole idea of I'm self-made and I'm this and that, but you said in your own story, without your parents, they wasn't in the classroom with you, but they did things that allowed you to be in that classroom, right? So it's nothing wrong with getting help, you know what I mean? But don't give up on your dreams. Push forward, yo.
It's there, like the meme about you're hacking away and a mining underground, and then right before there, you could just be right there. Your diamond could be right there, on the other
side of the dirt.
You just gotta keep going. You gotta keep going, no matter how hard it gets. Because there is gonna be times where you're like, I don't know, is this what I want to do, or are you sure that I want to be, this? Like, if you feel it, there's something that can't really be taught. If you feel it, go for it. Keep going. Give 100. And what's the worst that could happen? If you give 100 at trying to get something, if it doesn't work, then I gave it 100%.
Yeah,
I tried. You can look back when you're 40, 50 years old and say, I tried.
And then also another lesson is just it's okay to even pivot if things don't work out one way, because like you said, it was gonna be a doctor. That was what you were set on. Like, I'm doctor. You know what I mean? And you were able to pivot into being a PA, and I'm pretty sure that was a blow at one point. You felt the way about that, but nonetheless, it's worked out for you, and you're still being able to impact the people that you need to in the way that you want to. So, you know what I mean? It's nothing wrong. It's okay. You know what I mean?
Roll with the punches.
That's it, bro.
I always say, put big goals, and how you get there, let life kind of take care of that. But just know, okay, you have a direction. Yeah. I'm going this way. I don't know how or when, but I'm going to get there. I'm going to make sure that everything I do lines me out that way. Yeah. Just do that. Because if you set specific goals, life has a way of telling you, like, let me show you something.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the things I would say.
Well, Manny, I appreciate you coming by, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah, once again, man, I appreciate it, man. You killed it, bro.
Nah, thank you. It's a
Appreciate
pleasure to
that,
be
bro.
here.
Yes, sir, man.
I'm done, man.
All right, y'all stay tuned. We got some more episodes coming up for you, man. Once again, this is within our reach. I just want to thank our special guest, Manny, my man Nelson in the back, Rel in the back. But yeah, talk to you guys soon.